Hey everyone, you might have heard that we are supposedly in a war for Israel.
I am furious about this. We are nearly $40 trillion in debt. How much is this war going to cost us? We have seen enough of our American troops dead and murdered for foreign countries. And now we've had four dead and murdered, just like you said, for Israel and for the Iranian people, not for the American people. And I don't want to see any more dead and murdered.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review, and that, of course, was former Congresswoman from Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene, making the case that this is all about foreign countries, all about Israel. Now, I give her credit. I think she's sincere. I think she's been consistent on this question, but I think she is profoundly wrong, and this represents a pretty significant slice of opinion on the right. And folks who think this way think they got major confirmation from the horse's mouth itself, not necessarily Donald Trump, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio at a press briefing the other day talking about an Israeli attack and how it forced our hand. And we're just been on the caboose here on a train driven by Israel.
That if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed.
There it is. We're supposed to believe that he just came out and said it. This is all about Israel. Now, there's important context to this remark that we haven't heard so much of. I want to go to that in a minute. But first of all, does this make any sense at all? Is Donald Trump, of all people, being told what to do by a foreign leader, a leader of another country in a country of about 9 million people, is supposedly dictating to Trump about what he should do on a really consequential matter of war or peace that could put his presidency at risk? Really? We're supposed to believe that? Look, I think it was total BS when people on the left, a few on the never Trump right, suggested that Donald Trump was controlled by Russia in the first term. And it's total BS now when you have other people on the right saying he's totally controlled by Israel. Trump is very much the senior partner in this alliance, as he is the senior partner in most alliances and most agreements and arrangements. And if he wanted to stop Netanyahu, if Trump didn't want to do this, he could have just told Netanyahu, no, I don't want you going after the Iranian missiles. It's going to put our forces, our bases at risk, and I will have none of it. How did the 12-day war end last year? Well, the Israelis had launched a final raid to knock out a lot of the Iranian leadership. Perhaps Khomeini, other reporting has said no, he wasn't on the list. But anyway, Trump just said no, turn him around. We're not doing this. And then publicly talked about it and said how stupid it was on the part of the Israelis. He also pressured Netanyahu to give up some of his aims in the Gaza war and sign on to a peace deal. So Trump runs U.S. foreign policy. Foreign actors do not run it for him. This war is very much in the interest of Israel, but is also in the interest of the United States. This is arguably the most anti-American regime on the planet. It was founded in antagonism towards the United States as it was first taking form. Basically, its first act was to seize and abuse American hostages. Then it has supported terrorism against Americans down through the decades. Beirut barracks bombing, Khobar Towers, all the roadside bombings in Iraq against our forces. Latest count is 603 Americans killed by Iranian roadside bombs. So it shouldn't be surprising that Donald Trump doesn't like this regime very much. And sure enough, he doesn't. And by the way, he was the one who first talked about publicly about hitting Iran. And he did it during those protests when the Iranian regime gunned down in cold blood in a matter of a day or two thousands of protesters. Then subsequently, we moved massive forces into the region. You don't do that if you're just worried about the effect of an Israeli operation. You do that if you're all in on a major military operation on your own. And this, by the way, is what Donald Trump said, President Trump said, when he was asked by reporters, did Israel force your hand?
Mr. President, did Israel force your hand to launch these strikes against Iran? Did Netanyahu pull the United States into this war?
No, I might have forced their hand. You see, we were having negotiations with these lunatics, and it was my opinion that they were going to attack first. They were going to attack. If we didn't do it, they were going to attack first. I felt strongly about that. And we have great negotiators, great people that do this very successfully and have done it all their lives very successful. And based on the way the negotiation was going, I think they were going to attack first. And I didn't want that to happen. So if anything, I might have forced Israel's hand. But Israel was ready and we were ready, and we've had a very, very powerful impact.
That's so Donald Trump. Did they force my hand? No, I forced their hand. And not only have we heard Trump say for years now that it's intolerable that Iran can't get a nuclear weapon, he has a history of anti-regime advocacy and calling for military force going back decades. Here he is in 1980.
When you get the respect of the other countries, then the other countries tend to do a little bit as you do, and you can create the right attitudes. The Iranian situation is a case in point. That they hold our hostages is just absolutely and totally ridiculous. That this country sits back and allows a country such as Iran to hold our hostages, to my way of thinking, is a horror. And I don't think they'd do it with other countries. I honestly don't think they'd do it with other countries.
Obviously, you're advocating that we should have gone in there with troops, etc., and brought our boys out.
I absolutely feel that, yes. I don't think there's any question, and there's no question in my mind. I think right now would be an oil-rich nation, and I believe that we should have done it, and I'm very disappointed that we didn't do it, and I don't think anybody would have held us in abeyance. I don't think anybody would have been angry with us, and we had every right to do it at the time. I think we've lost the opportunity.
How clear can you be? And here's Trump in 2011.
And other countries where it looked like it was an impossibility, and it looks like that one's going to collapse also. So Iran can be taken. I would never take the military card off the table. And it's possible that it'll have to be used because Iran cannot have nuclear weapons.
And that terrible trail of destruction I mentioned in Iraq with Iran going after our service members, Trump hasn't forgotten. Here's Jake Tapper of CNN reporting on a conversation he just had with President Trump.
The president said this is the way to deal with Iran. We don't have to worry about agreements. He talked about all of the years, decades of killing and IEDs and all the destruction that Iran has wreaked on the United States and other countries.
And by the way, he didn't forget, this isn't the kind of thing people forget, that the Iranians were trying to assassinate him, as Jonathan Karl tweeted about his interview with President Trump. By the way, here's a clip from a Trump-Biden debate in 2024 where Trump is not talking about Iran in this instance, but where Trump forcefully makes the case for letting Israel finish the job in Gaza, another indication of where he, as a matter of his deep convictions, is coming from on these issues.
But he said the only one who wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job.
So I think all that is dispositive. One, Trump doesn't have the personality to get pushed around by anyone, certainly not by leaders of small countries. Two, he's been consistent for so long. He hates this regime and has talked about using military force against it going back decades. So what about that Rubio comment at the beginning? I promised we'd come back to it. That's what we're doing here. Again, people are saying, oh, Rubio's admitting Israel wanted to do this. We didn't want to do it. We just had to come in to protect our interests because of what Israel was doing, when that's not what he meant at all. He was talking about the timing, the sequencing. You know, back in June, when both Israel and the U.S. attacked Iran, Israel obviously went first, then we came in later. Rubio is saying, as a matter of the timing of the question, why now? If Israel had gone first, Iran would have hit all sorts of folks around the region in retaliation, including us. So it made sense to go simultaneously with Israel in this big preemptive attack. Reporters came back to this question, and Rubio made it quite clear what he meant. Check this out.
The U.S. was forced to strike because of an impending Israeli action?
No, let me two things I would say. Number one is, no matter what, ultimately this operation needed to happen. That's the question of why now. But this operation needed to happen because Iran in about a year or a year and a half would cross the line of immunity, meaning they would have so many short-range missiles, so many drones, that no one could do anything about it because they could hold the whole world hostage. Look at the damage they're doing now. And this is a weakened Iran. Imagine a year from now. So that had to happen. Obviously, we were aware of Israeli intentions and understood what that would mean for us, and we had to be prepared to act as a result of it. But this had to happen no matter what.
So there you have it. Rubio was saying this needed to happen one way or the other for U.S. interests, because if Iran was able over time to rebuild its missile capacity, eventually it would be able to stay our hand against doing anything serious to check its nuclear program. So couldn't be clearer about that. But given all the static and distortion over this, Rubio came back the next day and again underlined the clear meaning of what he had said.
Yesterday, you told us that Israel was going to strike Iran and that's why we needed to get involved. Today, the president said that Iran was going to get
Yeah, your statement is false. So that's not what I was asked very specifically. Were you there yesterday?
Yes, I asked
Okay. No, were you the one that, because somebody asked me a question yesterday, did we go in because of Israel? And I said, you asked me that, that follow-up. And I said, no. I told you this had to happen anyway. The president made a decision, and the decision he made was that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ballistic missile program, that Iran was not going to be allowed to hide behind its ability to conduct these attacks. That decision had been made. The president systematically made a decision to systematically destroy this terroristic capability that they had, and we carried that out. I was very clear in that answer. This was a question of timing, of why this had to happen as a joint operation, not the question of the intent. Once the president made a decision that negotiations were not going to work, that they were playing us on the negotiations, and that this was a threat that was untenable, the decision was made to strike them. That's what I said yesterday, and you guys need to play it. If you're going to play these statements, you need to play the whole statement, not clip it to reach a narrative that you want to do, all right?
So look, all sorts of legitimate and fair criticisms of this military operation, criticisms of how Trump has handled it, worries about how it's going to end up. But please, 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 let's not pretend that this president of the United States or this country are on a puppet string controlled by Bibi Netanyahu and Israel. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.